Welcome back to Power Lunch. This half hour we're talking about the big business of marijuana. Should it be legalized? Should it not? What would that do on a fiscal basis? In a rather very interesting departure from Bush policy, Attorney General Eric Holder signals a change on marijuana policy. John Harwood joins us with some of the fallout on that from Washington. Hi, John.
Hey, Sue. You know, it hasn't gotten much attention given all the focus on our economic problems, but President Obama has changed the federal government's policy on medical marijuana. The Bush administration used federal law to target sellers of medical marijuana, even in the 13 states that make medical marijuana legal. Attorney General Eric Holder told reporters this week that Team Obama will take a different approach that takes note of the policies of states. Quote, consistent with what the president said when he was campaigning, our focus will be on people and organizations that are growing and cultivating substantial amounts of marijuana and doing so in a way that's inconsistent with federal law and state law. Now, so far, not much response from Republicans. They're busy targeting the Obama administration on the economy. But don't be surprised if the marijuana issue surfaces as the 2010 elections get closer, Sue.
And that's one of the reasons we're talking about it, John. Thank you very much. So one of the questions that we're putting forward is, should marijuana be legalized? Here to tell us the pros and cons of that is Rob Campea. He's the executive director at the Marijuana Policy Project, and Asa Hutchinson, former head of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, and of course the rest of the gang is here as well. I'm going to start with you, if I can, Mr. Hutchinson. Make the case for why it should not be legalized at this point.
Well, and Attorney General Holder's statement does not change federal law. Federal law still makes possession, sale of marijuana for whatever purpose illegal. The question is whether it should be expanded or legalized. Absolutely not. If you look at harmful drugs, whether it's tobacco or other hard drugs such as marijuana, cocaine, methamphetamine, the objective of society is to reduce the use of harmful drugs. If you legalize another harmful drug, the question is, will it expand use and availability? And the answer is absolutely yes.
Rob,
why do you want to do that?
If we follow that logic, then we should outlaw alcohol as well, right, Rob?
Well, you know, the simple argument is that the prohibition of marijuana is not preventing people from growing it, selling it, or using it. 25 million people a year use marijuana illegally. This prohibition has failed ever since it was first enacted in 1937. So it's time to take a new approach. We learned with alcohol prohibition from 1919 to 1933 that it didn't actually help matters, and in fact made matters worse. Loss of tax revenue as well as violence associated with the sale of alcohol. And we're seeing that same kind of thing happening with the prohibition of marijuana.
Asa Hutchinson, let me just ask you this question. I understand what you're saying. I don't think the alcohol argument is the exact right one. You don't want to do anything to increase. If you have a problem over here with alcohol, you wouldn't necessarily want to make it worse by making another substance illegal. But let me ask you this. How do you make the cost-benefit analysis? That you spend all this money, you keep spending it, and you don't ever get anywhere. And in the meanwhile, you end up undermining sort of support for the rule of law as you keep enforcing a law that many in the population disagree with.
Well, first of all, if people disagree with it in our democracy, they can change the law. Thus far, in the last 8 years, they have not been successful in changing the law. In fact, Alaska decriminalized marijuana. When they saw it became a huge problem, they adjusted the law and recriminalized it. And so the population still resists the legalization of marijuana. But it's a public decision. But whenever you talk about the cost-benefit, first of all, the figures on enforcement, that applies across the board, whether it's all illegal drugs. If you legalize one drug, you still got enforcement costs and the whole vast range of methamphetamine, other illegal drugs.
You know, let me just jump in here and share with you some numbers. The DEA spent $10 billion last year, $10 billion fighting marijuana. Not every drug, just marijuana. Now, keep in mind, California actually collected $11 million, small in comparison, but this is one state, in tax revenue off of medicinal marijuana. So it shows you that there is some money that can be made on the government's behalf in the way of taxes on this product.
Guys, Rob, Asa, don't move. We're going to have more in this discussion right after that. Those are great numbers, Trish, and we'll talk about whether or not you can make a lot more money. Like maybe the state of California can use that shot in the arm after this.
Meantime, on the U.S. markets,
how much money do you pay in sales tax to the state of California every year?
$300,000.
$300,000. And what do you pay in federal income tax?
About double that, about 500, 600,000.
So the government's making money off you too.
Definitely.
We continue our discussion on the big business of marijuana and legalization. We got Rob Campion, Asa Hutchinson standing by with us. And Lee Gallagher, I want to bring you in because you edited a piece for your magazine about the legalization of marijuana. What kind of economic effect would that have? Would it be good
Well,
for the
you know, Trish makes some really good points. We've got this natural resource right in our own backyard. Prices are doing well. Production is up. We found that actually last year was a record year because of a series of weather, consequences. It was a bad year for wine, but it was a great year for marijuana. So, and if you look at the, as Trish mentioned, 13 states have actually decriminalized possession. The problem is the state and the federal laws really go kind of against each other. But there is definitely an economic case to be made. And, you also can think about the ancillary businesses that might benefit. I mean, I don't know, accessories, paraphernalia, the salty snack business.
But the key is taxation, the ability to tax, right?
Right, exactly.
Is this history repeating itself, Rob, when it comes to, wasn't it during the 30s, the Great Depression, that we got rid of prohibition, and here we are another time when we're kind of down economically, we're revisiting some of our abstinence laws?
Yeah, it's the same situation. 1929, the stock market crashed, and then it was 4 years later that the country repealed alcohol prohibition, and it was largely, but not entirely, for economic reasons. There was a large industry that was not being taxed. And right now, the argument's very clear with marijuana. Marijuana is the largest cash crop in the country. More marijuana is sold than vegetables and corn combined in this country. So it's not going away.
Is that
the
by
question
dollar volume, Rob? That's by dollar volume, right? Okay.
I just want to jump in here
because of the price of
right.
marijuana,
Well, and this
not
price
the
is very
quantity.
important because think about this, guys. It really wouldn't be this expensive.
No, if it was legal.
If it was legal.
You'd get a glut.
Exactly. It's
I think we ought to give Secretary
$400 per
Hutchinson
pound
a chance
to produce. Then retailing on the street for up to $6,000. That margin is a result of the illegality.
Mr. Hutchison, what do you make of that? And indeed, if we do find ourselves in times that parallel perhaps the Great Depression, what about the point that Steve Leisman brought out about legalizing it?
If your motivation is to bring revenue to the government, legalize, regulate it. But if your motivation is to reduce the usage, to save teenage lives, to reduce dependence, to strengthen our culture, then the cost is worth it, and the revenue should not be a motivation.
Well, I think you make a good point, though, because it is a question of whether you buy the moral argument, as you suggested, or the economic argument. Economically, you're basically agreeing that there's a good reason to legalize it, but morally, I think a lot of people would say that there's not a lot of good evidence to suggest that people think that it is more dangerous than alcohol or tobacco. I don't hear people dying in car crashes because of marijuana use, but you hear about alcohol abuse all the time. And I think the American public is not buying that anymore. I think that's what we're seeing now. People are starting to doubt that. More people are using it. That's why the consumption rates are going up.
What do you think, Mr. Hutchison?
Well, I disagree with that. I think that if you look to health professionals, they're not in favor of legalizing it. They recognize the health consequences of it. We try to, the carcinogens in a marijuana cigarette are more than a tobacco cigarette.
That's not true.
But if that's your logic, shouldn't we outlaw alcohol?
Well, this debate is not about alcohol. The debate is about a harmful substance called marijuana and drugs.
I think this debate is about money.
I'm speaking as a parent as well as a law enforcer.
I think the reason why marijuana is illegal and alcohol and tobacco are legal is because the alcohol and tobacco industries don't want marijuana to become legal because they feel that they're going to lose some money out of the process.
What do you think?
If people can make money out of it, then there will be an incentive to do it.
Unless they can get in.
There. Unless they can get into it, which is a whole different thing.
We got 30 seconds. Ron, you want to respond to that?
Well, first of all, marijuana is clearly safer than alcohol or tobacco. It's impossible to overdose on marijuana. Marijuana absolutely does not cause cancer. There are no recorded deaths.
But address Keith's point. What if it were legal? Would we see the tobacco companies fighting it because they don't want to lose market share to it?
I don't think that's the reason that marijuana is currently illegal. I think that it's illegal just out of inertia. It was made illegal in 1937 largely for racist reasons, and it's just been on the books ever since. There aren't powerful lobbies on Capitol Hill lobbying to keep marijuana illegal.
All right. Thank you both. Appreciate it very much.